Welcome back, everybody. This is your internet wrestling champion here, back again for another Raw review, this time in London, England. Let's get into it. We finally get some forward progression with the narrative in our opening segment. John Cena, as per the last couple of weeks in Brussels and Glasgow before this week, he comes out to a chorus of boos. Michael Cole puts it pretty accurately this week when he says, "What used to be a smile is now a scowl." And yeah, that was a pretty appropriate word because this guy had the most stank-faced demeanor walking down that ramp. I have never seen that out of John Cena. Maybe once in like 2012 when he hit Masked Kane in the face with a stair step, during the Embrace the Hate arc. If anybody was there around that time, that was the last time I've seen that kind of a scowl out of Cena, man. That was, I don't know who gave this guy like black coffee when he asked for double double earlier in the day, because this guy was just not feeling London this week, man. He came out like he was on a mission to tear a new one to London. But fortunately, this week he didn't get the opportunity because, unlike the last couple weeks, maybe 10 seconds after John had a mic in his hand, Cody's music had hit and he comes out. Cody comes out and similar crowd reaction as the last couple weeks, whereas John had got the boos, Cody gets the standing ovation. And it reinforces this idea that John Cena really is not the top guy anymore. Now, Cody's in the ring, mic in his hand, and he tells John that he's not going to let him talk like he had the last 2 weeks because he doesn't believe that John is being totally genuine with the audience. He thinks that John is actually lying to the audience as to what his reasons are for why he turned and why he aligned himself with The Rock. Now, Cody starts to egg John into a promo exchange, a battle on the mic. He highlights all his own criticisms that have haunted him throughout a large portion of his career. He brings up Stardust. He brings up his own lisp. He basically tries to call out all the possible talking points that John Cena would have in order to neutralize it before he even gets it out. However, John Cena doesn't really fall for the bait. He tells Cody that he won't reduce himself to punching down to Cody's level. He also says that he's not going to cook him, he's going to bury him, which I thought was like, that was the first time ever that John himself had actually referred to the act of burying another talent. He usually calls it out and points out the flaws of that argument, but this is the first time where he himself says, "I am going to bury X, Y, Z, in this case, it's you." He goes on to claim that Cody has been protected for far too long in his career. He honestly, like, you can really hear the frustration and the pent up rage that John Cena has been keeping bottled inside over the last, let's say, maybe 3 to 5 years. Because he goes over all their history together, how they rode together. He even calls Cody Rhodes his own chauffeur. He says, "I have been so great that the WWE can rest their heartbeat of the organization and the future on my chauffeur." And he finally goes on to actually give out his reason as to why he sold out. He says, "The reason I did what I did is because you, Cody Rhodes, holding that title makes me sick." And you can really hear the pain in his voice while he says it too. And I love the camera angle and the camera work on this segment, because John Cena, when he's like just laying it on to Cody, there's no more than an inch of air separating the two at one point. They are going cornea to cornea, like their eyeballs are practically touching each other. And speaking of eyes, John Cena does not blink for a large portion of this program. If you can watch, this man is on a mission and he really believes in what he's saying. That's the impression that I've gotten. Like, this guy has more conviction in his belief than Cody does in his own. You know what I mean? That's the impression. That's the biggest takeaway I've gotten from this entire segment. It's that John Cena, for all his flaws, for as delusional as some people might think he is, he does not think he's delusional. And he really believes what he's saying with his heart and soul, because he does not blink when he says this next part. He says, "You stuck by my side, you rode with me for years, and you stole my blueprint as to how to be undeniable, and still you are underwhelming." He even calls out Cody Rhodes for being lazy. He said, "You have resorted for lazy gimmicks, like having these people chant your theme song over and over again just for you to get." And this is where the crowd does exactly that. They start chanting Cody Rhodes and singing his song just out of spite, just to stick it to Cena. And I really thought it would work. I thought he would be a classic heel and get all like stewing in his own froth and get all moody when he heard it. But no, he's just jumping for joy and he's laughing. He's having the time of his life. It's really, really impressive how he can maintain the same attitude for the most part and body language and demeanor, but still be presented as a top heel. Like, what has really changed other than one moment where he hit Cody Rhodes? He's still the same guy. You don't see that out of your typical heel turns. You know what I mean? Now, this is where Cody fires back and he tells him, I don't think anyone was really expecting it, but he says, "You were right. I was chosen. I was chosen by these people." And he continues to ask John Cena, "Can you say the same? Who chose you, John?" And he calls out John. He says, "You were chosen by some guy in a suit in the office that's no longer here, who we're not allowed to talk about." And everybody just went nuts. I was not expecting that. I didn't expect any type of reference to Vince McMahon, but I'm glad that he did it. I'm glad because this really showed that he can hold his own against John on the mic in a promo battle, unlike nobody before him in the modern era. You know what I mean? Because Roman Reigns, as good as he was, as much as he improved on the mic, I just didn't feel like he was able to go toe-to-toe with John on the mic. And back in 2021, he was much better than he did in 2017. But you can tell John was still holding back and he was limited as to what he could say. Whereas here, he had a lot more freedom. He can cut deeper and not have to worry because Cody, evidently, as he has shown yesterday, he can in fact go to blow for blow with John. He even goes on to say, like, "I don't know why everybody's so terrified of you on the mic," and says that he's the only one who isn't. And he thanks John for saying that he created all of this for Cody, because he then rebuttals with, "You did create all this, and you made it very easy for me to walk away and start my own thing and get people to pay attention to him, because John Cena created a generation of disenfranchised fans." I cannot believe that it took this long for somebody to actually call him out for that, Even Punk in the Summer of Punk didn't actually put it like that. He just said people were tired of him. People would say that people were tired of him. But no one outright hit it on the nose like that and said, "You're creating a generation of disenfranchised fans," because that's exactly what John did, or rather Vince through John. And I think this is my favorite part of Cody's section of the segment, because he then calls John out again in a way that no one else has done. He calls John out and says, "Don't act like you've cleaned your room before you left. Stop acting like you left the WWE better than the way you had found it." And I really had to go back and check to make sure what he was saying was true. And in my honest opinion, I would say John Cena stopped doing wrestling full time around 2016, 2017, right? So if you were to compare 2016, 2017 WWE to 2002, 2003 WWE, could we really say he left it better than the way he found it? Because look at the roster in 2016. Yeah, it was hot, but a lot of the people were coming from other promotions within the last 6 to 12 months, right? They had to have a huge influx of talent in order to revitalize the entire brand. They needed the women's revolution to revitalize the entire brand. It wasn't John Cena that made the company better. And even then, it's arguable that it wasn't in the same condition that he had found it in. I would argue it was better in 2002 than it was in 2016. And this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly the kind of build we needed this far into the road to WrestleMania. This segment not only played with the audience's emotion, but it had all the fans thinking. I had to go over the last 10 to 15 years of my experience as a fan to either validate or invalidate the points that were being made by both sides. That is the caliber of talent and the caliber of mic work that we need right now for the next 18 days until WrestleMania 41, because it just has not been here. It has not been here for the last few months, and I'm so happy that they've finally turned it from like a 20 to 100. Now, Cody then asks him one final question. He says, let me ask you this, which is probably going to punch a giant hole through the logic that you brought to the table. Between the two of us, John, which one of us sold out to The Rock? Now, predictably, the crowd goes crazy for that part, and they start chanting, you sold out to John for a few minutes before he gets his rebuttal in. And this is where John responds with a funny line. He says, just like all of these people, you have more feces in your brain than facts. And he continues to say, at no point in his career was he ever protected from the crowd or from any participant of the roster, both past and present, who continue to take shots at him. Which I say is a fair point. Yeah, he was protected in the sense that Vince McMahon always booked him to look powerful, and he was Super Cena, of course. But that's only protection insofar as to say that's part of the territory when you're booked as the Hulk Hogan-esque figure, right? That was gonna happen no matter who it was. Hell, that's happening to Cody right now. When's the last time Cody lost a match? I think it was 2024 against Drew McIntyre. Only one or two people have ever beaten Cody. No, only three people has ever pinned Cody clean, which was Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, and The Rock. And he's been back for 3 years. So let that sink into your head. Who's really protected right now? The man who's lost every match for the last 8 years, or the man who hasn't lost a match in over a whole year, who's only lost 3 matches in 3 years, 2 of which wasn't even a one-on-one, none of which were clean. Now, to close off, his closing line was, you're starting to realize, Cody, you're starting to realize that even at your best, you couldn't wipe my ass. And he says, see you at Mania, champ. And he starts to walk off. But before he even gets a chance to leave the ring, Cody stops him. He's like, hold on. I need you to hear something. Never in my career have I ever heard these people chant that I can't wrestle. And that, finally, he brought up one of the bigger and more prevalent complaints that people had of John Cena over the decade that he had dominated the sport. It's that he couldn't wrestle. And this seems to be the tipping point for John. Out of all the things that were said in this heated exchange, this one line is what seemed to have really gotten under his skin, because he gets back in the ring and tries to hit Cody with a cheap shot. Cena hitting a cheap shot, it still doesn't, yeah. But unfortunately for him, it doesn't work out in his favor, because Cody counters and gets him in the crossroads and lays him out before exiting the ring. And the camera just pans to Cena laid out in the ring for like 10 seconds. And this last part, I'll be honest, is the one part of the entire segment that I didn't like. In what was otherwise a phenomenal segment, I thought this part was a little weak. Because why make him look so weak like that? He was looking so strong. John was looking so strong. But right at the end, they made him look pathetic. I'm sure that was deliberate. That was probably the point, to make him look that way so he can win at WrestleMania. But even then, I don't really feel secure saying that, because like Triple H is known for hitting us with big swerves at the pay-per-views, right? He's known to make it seem predictable only for the least predictable thing to happen. Like me, really, right now, at this point, I feel like they're making it seem like Cena's gonna win, but they're gonna hit us with a swerve by having neither of them win and having CM Punk cash in his favor and win the title from both of them and turning him heel. I don't know. It's at this point, everything's in the air, just because of how much they've pulled the rug from underneath us and made us think that we know what was going on. So yeah, that was your segment today. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought this was the strongest so far between the two since Elimination Chamber, and it was much needed. This really revved it up from what was otherwise a 10 to 100. This needed to have happened. I think it should have happened last week. It really made the segment in Glasgow feel like filler, and in the road to WrestleMania, in a match like this, in a storyline this huge, after such a historic heel turn, there's no business for filler content to be here. But all in all, there's nothing I can complain about in regards to yesterday's segment. I think it did a tremendous job in really showing both people's headspace and both people's point of view regarding the whole situation. And I think it did an excellent job in furthering the narrative. And I think this really did a good job in bringing it all together and creating even more excitement for next week and the weeks to follow. So there you have it. That is my review on this week's segment between John Cena and Cody Rhodes. Heel John Cena versus face of the company, Cody Rhodes. Who do you got? What are your thoughts on this week's promo? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you like the content that I've been putting out, feel free to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. I'll be doing weekly videos like this as long as I can, ideally for a living if I can. And I just want to say I appreciate every single last one of you that put the time into watching what I put out. I know just how many creators there are out there on YouTube, and the fact that you dedicated 10 minutes plus of your time to watching what I put out means the world to me. And yeah, this is your internet champion with another Raw review, and I will see you again next week. Until then, stay safe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.